Welcome to the Rudick Report. Today is January 16th, 2023. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it looks like we are on the verge of a debt default. According to the CNBC article, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen on Friday notified Congress that the United States will reach its debt limit next Thursday. If that occurs, the Treasury Department will begin taking certain extraordinary measures to prevent the United States from defaulting on its obligations. The Treasury is not currently able to estimate how long these emergency actions will allow the United States to pay for government obligations, she wrote. But it is unlikely that cash and extraordinary measures will be exhausted before early June. She warned McCarthy that it is critical that Congress act in a timely manner to increase or suspend the debt limit. Quote, failure to meet the government's obligations would cause irreparable harm to the United States economy, the livelihoods of Americans, and the global financial stability. I respectfully urge Congress to act promptly to protect the full faith and credit of the United States. A spokesman for McCarthy had no immediate comment on Yellen's letter. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre told reporters later Friday, quote, Congress is going to need to raise the debt limit without condition. It is one of the basic items that Congress must deal with, and that this should be done without conditions. So there is going to be no negotiations over it, Jean-Pierre said. This is something that must be done. Yellen's letter effectively starts the clock countdown on how long the federal government can continue to make interest payments on its debt. The limit in the total amount of money the U.S. government is allowed to legally borrow to pay for its existing obligations. Those obligations include Social Security, Medicare, military salaries, interest on the national debt, tax funds, and other payments. Oh yeah, did I say interest on the national debt? The so-called extraordinary measures available to the Treasury Secretary free up the government's borrowing capacity. This can extend the clock for weeks or months while Congress hashes out the bill to raise the borrowing limit. Slimy Chuck Schumer said Congress must act on legislation to prevent a disastrous default. We must meet our obligations and protect the full faith and credit of the United States. Quote, a default forced by extreme MAGA Republicans could plunge the country into a deep recession and lead to even higher costs for American working families on everything from mortgages, car loans, and credit card interest rates. And there it is, ladies and gentlemen. There it goes again, blaming the debt on MAGA Republicans and not the decades of social programs and the piling on of debt by these socialists. Yellen wrote that these two extraordinary measures that Treasury expects to implement are redeeming existing and suspending new investments of the Civil Service Retirement and Disability Fund and the Postal Service Retiree Health Benefits Fund, and suspending reinvestment of Government Securities Investment Fund of the Federal Employees Retirement System. She noted Congress previously authorized the Treasury to use such measures, which the department has employed in the past. Quote, after the debt limit impasse has ended, those funds will be made whole again, Yellen wrote. A senior White House official told CNBC that Biden administration plans to pursue negotiations in earnest with Congress after the mid-April tax deadline. At that point, the official said, the federal government will have a better idea on how much revenue is coming in and how far it will go in paying the country's bills and how urgently it needs to reach a deal. The trajectory of the American economy between now and then will also determine how brazen Republicans become in their demands to cut spending in response. Senator Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, the top Senate Republican, has a long record of rejecting an increase to the debt ceiling unless fiscally conservative policies are included. It remains unclear whether the new GOP majority of the House under McCarthy will unite over its set of demands. McCarthy has made little secret of the fact that Republicans intend to demand massive spending cuts to the federal budget in exchange for approving an increase in the debt ceiling. But he told reporters on Thursday that the GOP lawmakers don't want to put any fiscal problems through our economy, and we won't. The new House Majority Leader, Representative Steve Scalise, earlier this week compared the U.S. borrowing limit to a household credit card, saying the nation needs to curb its spending the same way a person with maxed out credit cards would. At the same time you're dealing with a max debt limit, you're also putting mechanisms in place so that you don't keep maxing it out, Scalise said to reporters. Because if the limit gets raised, you don't go to the store the next day and just max it out again. You start figuring out how to control the spending problem. And this has been the issue all along. A default on Treasury bonds could throw the U.S. economy into a tailspin as bad as the Great Recession, the research from Moody's Analytics warned in a September 21 report. I would argue that this is exactly what needs to take place. All these measures would do is kick the can down the road. Eventually, this needs to take place and let the economy recover as it should. By raising the debt limit repeatedly, it's just going to make the crash worse, and when this all unhinges, it will make the Great Depression look like a walk in the park. If you don't see it by now that the dollar is dying, then you never will. We are on the verge of a total financial collapse, and you need to prepare for that eventuality. At the time, Moody's also projected a 4% decline in gross domestic product and the loss of nearly 6 million jobs if the U.S. defaulted. In her letter to McCarthy on Friday, Yellen wrote, "Indeed, in the past, even threats that the U.S. government might fail to meet its obligations have caused real harms, including the only credit rating downgrade in the history of our nation in 2011. Yellen added that increasing or suspending the debt limit does not authorize new spending commitments or cost taxpayers money. It simply allows the government to finance existing legal obligations that Congress and presidents of both parties have made in the past." And in the end, what I'm trying to say here is that all these lunatics in the government are going to do is tax us all into oblivion and tell you that it's for the good of our country. They will enact capital controls and perhaps even bail-ins, which would limit your access to your own money, whether it's in a bank account or investment accounts, including your 401ks. So be prepared. Thank you for listening. And until next time, this is the Rudick Report.